Hey, Clayton, what happens right after we die? We read in the book of Revelation this summer, and you talked about what happens after Jesus comes back. But what happens to us between when we die and when Jesus returns? This is a really good question. It's a pretty common question that people ask. When we talk about death in our society, we tend to emphasize what you would call life after death, okay? Rather than talking about the end of the age, resurrection and new creation, we tend to talk about what happens immediately after someone dies. So if you go to a funeral, you're going to hear people talk about their loved one being in heaven right now, or seeing Jesus, or all the things they're experiencing. You know, all of these things that immediately upon death they go into heaven and what they're experiencing. And so we tend to focus on that. But if you open up the Bible, you'll realize, and sometimes people are surprised by this, that the Bible doesn't actually talk about that very much. There's actually very little information about what happens to someone immediately after death. What the Bible talks a lot about, is what happens at the end of the age. So when Jesus returns, how our bodies are going to be raised, we are going to be judged, we are going to have a new creation, the whole physical world is going to be remade. This is what's going to happen. This is the big hope, the thing that the Bible talks about over and over and over again, new creation. It only gives us a little bit of information about what is called the intermediate state. Okay, so the time between when someone dies and when they are resurrected to stand before Jesus. In that time where, basically where my grandma is right now, okay? What is grandma experiencing? Well, if I look at the verses in the Bible, there's actually only a handful of ones that describe it, maybe 4 or 5 in the New Testament, a few things that maybe hint at stuff, but only a few direct references. Let me share some of those with you, okay? In Philippians chapter 1, the Apostle Paul is recognizing that he's going to come to the end of his life fairly soon. And he's deciding, he's saying, okay, which should I pray for? That, God takes me soon, or that I stick around and get to do more work? And he's kind of going back and forth. And he admits, he says, I desire to depart to be with Christ, which is better by far. So this is how he talks about his own death. He says, when I die, it's going to be a good thing. It's going to be better for me than this life, because I'm going to be with Christ. And so he says, I'm looking forward to that. And so that we know it's with Christ and better by far. In another place, he says this, he says, we are confident, and I would say we would prefer to be away from the body and at home with the Lord. So he says, look, when you die, when you depart this body, you are with Jesus. Now, that's important. That's really important to know. When you die, you are with Jesus, and it's better. But there's not a lot of description in that. Right? There's no description of like, what does it look like? Or what do people, do you meet your departed loved ones? Do you, hang out with Jesus? Do you get to ask him questions? Do you get a house? Like what is heaven? There's none of that, right? So a lot of the things that people describe when they're saying, oh yeah, this is what heaven's like, and they imagine it, or they talk about near-death experiences and all that, none of that's in the Bible. The Bible simply says that after you die, you're with Jesus, and it's better. Now, there are 2 places where I think there's a little bit more elaborate description of what people are experiencing after death but before resurrection. And both of them are in the book of Revelation, which means they are complicated by the fact that Revelation uses a lot of symbolism to explain things. So we don't know how literal all these things are, but it conveys what people are up to in the afterlife right now. One of those is in chapters 4 and 5 of the book of Revelation. And what is happening is John, the author of Revelation, is seeing a vision of the throne room of Jesus. And he's standing there with all the angels and all of the heavenly creatures, and he sees a multitude of people. Now, these are people who are in heaven right now, which means they've died, and they are there standing before the throne of Jesus, and they're waiting to hear what Jesus is going to do to wrap things up for the world, okay? And John's waiting to get his vision of what the end of the world's going to be like and so on. And the people there are worshiping God and worshiping Jesus. So they're in the presence of Jesus in his throne room worshiping him. The other passage in Revelation that describes what people are doing is in Revelation chapter 6. There is a moment where things are really rough on earth, and the Christians who are on earth are experiencing a lot of persecution. And you get this scene, this moment in heaven where there are, it says, the souls of those who had been killed for their faith are before Jesus. And they are pleading with Jesus, would you put an end to the suffering of our brothers and sisters on earth? They are going through such hard times. We've been there. We know how bad it is. And so would you put an end to that for their sake? And they're pleading and praying to Jesus, saying, would you end the suffering of our persecuted brothers and sisters who are still on earth right now? And that's it. So those are the scenes we get. We get worship of Jesus and pleading on behalf of suffering Christians here on earth, which is a very interesting picture of heaven, if you ask me. I think most of us imagine heaven as, okay, here's what we're doing. We're on the cruise ship of eternity, right? Like we're going to sit by the pool and we're going to sip a mixed drink and listen to music and have food and just hang out and relax with people. Like that's kind of the feel that you get there. But how is heaven described? You're with Jesus, it's better. And yet you are before the throne, aware that the drama of history is still unfolding, and there are some people who are your brothers and sisters who are still going through hard times. And so you're saying, until they arrive, none of us arrive. Until they're okay, we're not completely okay. That even now, even though I'm in, free from pain and I'm in the presence of God, I'm still going to be concerned about the story on earth, because until that is resolved, we're not done. Because here's the thing, the hope of the Bible is not that we leave this earth and go and find some place that's better. The hope of the Bible is this, that we return to this place, this planet, that we get our bodies back, that the world is remade, that we rebuild society in a way that is just under the rule of Jesus, that the kingdom of God comes here on earth as it is in heaven, that his will is done. That's what we desire. That's the good news. That's the thing that makes us excited. And even the people who are in heaven right now are longing for that more than their current experience of heaven. So what is Grandma doing in heaven? She is enjoying the presence of Jesus, but she is also waiting for the day when Jesus will return to earth, the world will be renewed, and all will be made right. That's what our hope is. Both the people who are in heaven right now and the people who are on earth, our hope is the kingdom of God. Thanks for listening. If you've got your own questions, email questions@BibleSavvy.com. Like and subscribe to catch our regular episodes every Monday on the Bible Savvy Podcast.